Hey everyone, welcome to The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist. This is the interview series. I just want to make a couple quick points before we go into the interview. First of all, I'm not going to be making the giant 2.5 hour podcast episodes anymore or videos anymore. From now on, I'm going to do all the segments kind of the same as it was before. There's going to be interviews, there's going to be read reviews, Ask an Anarchist, and there's going to be the Anarchist Reading Corner, as well as I'm working on some other ideas as well. But they're all going to be released as individual episodes and individual videos only, so that it's not as much work to put them all together. I know some people might like those long videos and make a whole day of watching a 2.5 hour video, but I don't really have the time for that, and I don't expect most people do. So making it a little bit shorter and a little bit more digestible. And so then it'll seem like sometimes that content is coming pretty fast, and then I might go a week without posting anything, and then it'll be like 4 episodes within a week, stuff like that. I hope that everybody can keep up with what they want to keep up with. And as you know, like, you'll always be able to get at everything on YouTube, and it's all broken down there and ready for you to go and watch it whenever you want. I want to say thank you to all my patrons. There are 22 people right now who support my work and make it possible for me to spend the amount of time on this that I do. If you want to be part of that group and have my deepest appreciation, then you can do that at patreon.com/skepticalleftist, or you can send me a one-time donation at buymeacoffee.com/skepticallefty. If you can't support the show financially, there's other ways you can help, of course. You can give me a rating or a review on the podcast or app of your choice, or on one of those podcast review sites like Podchaser. You can also subscribe to the channel on YouTube and hit the like button on videos and comment and share. You probably know 1 or 2 people who might like my content, and they may know 1 or 2 people as well. And if we can reach enough people, then maybe we can start changing some more minds to a leftist perspective. I think that's basically everything that I wanted to say before this episode. This interview is a little bit different from some of the other ones that I've done. We do touch on politics a little bit, but it's really a personal look at what someone who's suffering from a chronic condition is dealing with, and the ways that the system is kind of not working for them. My friend Matty is the host of the podcast Nooks and Crannies. And if you've been listening for a long time, then you might remember him from early on with the episode, I think it was titled Canadian Lefties Chatting, or a couple of Canadian lefties, or something like that. It isn't even actually, that interview isn't even up on YouTube actually, because my internet was so bad that the video was just unsalvageable. But it was a great discussion if you want to go back in the podcast archives. Matty is a brilliant guy who has studied anthropology and has also suffered from over 40 concussions. This discussion is about that and how the system, like I say, has kind of failed him, even though it's the Canadian system. And a lot of Americans might be envious, but there's still a lot of missing components to the betterment of a person's life. So I guess that's it for an introduction. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Matty, and see you on the other side. All right. Hi, and welcome to The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist, the podcast where I talk to a variety of people to promote critical thinking, progressive politics, and left-wing philosophy. And today I am joined by Matty from Nooks and Crannies. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, buddy, as I'm trying to feverishly adjust the lighting here. I just realized there's like a big white square right over my right ear.
That's all right. You know, they actually make like some of this new video editing stuff is I can actually extract you from your background and then add it into a different background. So
okay, cool. So I should just keep like moving around to make your
yeah,
job.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's all good. So, before we start talking about all kinds of other things, I mean, you've been on the show before, but in case people didn't listen to that one, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, geez, where to start? Well, I'm 38 years old. Been exercising a lot and trying to work on my abs. And other than that, I have a podcast called Nooks and Crannies. It's a social science variety show. It's kind of like a grab bag in terms of topics. We talk about everything. Sometimes it's silly, but more often than not, it's very political. And outside of that, I have a almost 4-year-old, so I'm a happy stay-at-home parent, and I've also had 40 concussions. So that's kind of like the bomb that I drop at the end of the bio.
Yeah, that's kind of a major point, right? About how you deal with your life at this point.
Yeah, we try not to let it define us, our chronic illnesses, but they very much do as well. So that's kind of like the dialectic. So I did research at grad school. I got into the PhD and then the wheels fell off. But I do have a master's in medical anthropology, and my research topic, surprise, surprise, was concussions. So it made the research component a little bit easier on me when I was studying my own illness. And it was a great opportunity to learn more about my own illness. And then also I did interviews with athletes with concussions and then medical professionals who treat athletes with concussions.
Cool.
So, yeah.
I mean, not cool that you've had 40 concussions, but cool that it made your master's a little easier.
Totally. It's morbidly fascinating for sure. That's why I researched it at grad school, right? So
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, as a political show, I suppose we better also ask you, what is your political ideology?
Fiscal conservatism.
Okay.
No, I'm joking, folks.
This is now a debate show.
I got my red shirt on here for a reason. Yeah, I would sort of describe myself as a socialist. My wife works in politics, so a lot of my politics, it revolves around actually elected officials. So I kind of try to keep it grounded in that perspective, try to keep it rational and pragmatic. But as I'm closer to 40, I think I'm getting more and more left. But I've always been a socialist. And honestly, man, it just struck me as that's the role of government. But over the years, as we're entering the 2020s, it seems like straightforward progressive politics is being cast as radical. And
Right.
I have a real problem with that.
Yeah. Just basic human rights for everybody seems like some far left dream, right?
Redistribution
so
of capital, man. Nobody wants to see the billionaires become trillionaires, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. Ugh. Gross.
Yeah, and then we have I have a co-host, my good friend Evan on Nooks and Crannies. He's definitely lefter than I am, but he's also younger than I am, so I tend to tease him. I'm like, he'll settle down and settle into socialism when he's in his 30s, but right now he's still wanting to go out there and bust windows and have a good time. So
well, I mean, I'm over 40 and I'm out there. I want to bust some windows, so maybe you won't calm down. Maybe you'll get more radical.
Yeah, see, I've had too many concussions for that shit, and I do find that is one thing I do miss is a good demonstration. It is just the crowds and a peaceful demonstration. I'm just not good in that sort of environment, and I become a little edgy, so I'm probably the last person you want at a demonstration. I'm the one who's gonna spaz out and cause all the trouble, and the cops have an excuse then.
Right. I actually get anxious in large groups myself, so often with the idea of these going to demonstrations, it's okay, I really want to be there, but I can't I can't do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Even just last year, we went to a Black Lives Matter rally here in Regina. And even there, I had to stand on kind of the outskirts of the whole thing because it's so many people. It's just too many people in one place for me. And my partner, of course, she's got her phone and she's going up and she's meeting new people and interviewing people like she's a reporter.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
And you look like the white guy who got reluctantly dragged to a Black Lives Matter protest standing on the outskirts, but really you could have got social anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't like big groups.
Yeah. I'm radical. I just don't look like it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, shit. But okay, so you kind of mentioned your show a little bit. A social science variety show, you said?
Yeah, I try to be super niche. So we started, I guess it was 3 years ago now. We're coming up on our third year, I suppose. And so Evan has a BA now in anthropology. I kind of convinced him. I feel really bad about that. But he also has like a minor in philosophy, I believe. But I met him like 7-8 years ago. And we were working just like a soul crushing retail job, right? Like I just picked up a survival job and met him there. And he was like 19, 20.
Right.
But like on our first smoke break, I was like, shit, this guy might be the smartest person I'll ever meet in my life.
Oh, cool.
Like this guy is like jarringly intelligent. And
that's awesome.
My second thought is even before I started podcasting, because I had a previous show before the Nooks and Crannies. I thought like this was before I started that one, that he would be a good podcast co-host. Mm-hmm. Like he's somehow at the age of 19, he was better read than me, for example. But
a lot of young people have read a lot of stuff these days. Like it's pretty amazing.
And I'm just sitting there like a 32-year-old, like struggling through my master's, like hacking butts at the fucking wine store and just looking at this guy like full of life and energy and thoughts, and was like, okay, I better just make you co-opt you as my co-host.
Yeah, that's right.
So when we finally got around to starting the podcast, I wanted it to be random in topics, but the politics is progressive and leftist. It's also kind of like an open university, like that kind of concept. I wanted to like dispense and like transmit all the ivory tower knowledge that I acquired and just give it away for free. So that's kind of a political gesture as well, I suppose. And then it was a great opportunity for me after withdrawing from my PhD to keep my mind going and have like interesting discussions with Evan, much like we would on his back porch. So he's in Ottawa. I'm in Vancouver Island now.
Okay.
But we used to have just these like long, like fun chats on his back patio, and he's like, he can make the best cocktails. Like for example, like he can make like the shit out of an old fashioned. Like what kind of like 24-year-old can make an old fashioned like properly too, right?
Right.
Like Mai Tais and stuff. Like he's really kind of mixologist, and I'm the pothead. So we have a little bit of differences, but it's generally two white guys talking into microphones like every other podcast.
Like every other podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then we have lots of guests on. You came on, for example, with Skippy. We did a roundtable, which is folks, a nightmare to edit, but that's okay. It was fun. And we did like a recap of the election, I suppose, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's with roundtable podcasts. Yeah. That's why I never did any, when I had so many co-hosts, I didn't do content editing, right? Like, as long as I get this to sound good and everybody's good.
Yeah. Like I remember when me and the previous co-host went on your original show. Was it? Oh no! Now I'm looking. I'm like, oh no, it's Mind of a Skeptical Leftist. But whatever that show was called,
it was called Brainstorm.
Brainstorm. That's right. Yeah, and there was like 14 people in the room. I was just like, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, and we broadcast it live. So it was all the producer, Dave. He had to do all that mixing on the fly. Yeah.
What a nightmare. So I imagine you and Dave are no longer friends.
No. He's still out there encouraging. Yeah. He's a good guy. Yeah. He's a really good producer.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
I like this show too. I really enjoy, like I listen a lot, and I like your what is it called? The book reviews at the end?
Oh,
like
Red Reviews.
Oh, the best. That guy's a genius, eh? Like,
yeah,
where'd you grab that guy from?
I met Justin through the Atheist community, like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And we were on each other's shows a couple times and just got along really well. And then I thought, hey, he's doing book reviews on Instagram and on his website. I might as well see if he wants to do this on my show.
Grease him for the easy content. Yeah. That's what I thought Evan would be for our show, but I'm still waiting on his content.
Well, it seems like when I'm doing the production, right? Like, cause I do all this post-production stuff. And it takes so much time. Plus, I've got a job and a family. It's hard to always find the time to do research. So to have somebody who's like always reading and already doing all this stuff, it's like, wow, this is really helpful. and it's along the same lines, right? Like he's more of a Marxist Leninist than I am, where I'm more of an anarchist, but he's got like, so we're still politically aligned, just slightly different.
Yeah, exactly. Different enough to have an interesting conversation about the finite minutia points that really only our select audiences appreciate.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So if you're a leftist and you like to see a Marxist, Leninist, and an anarchist converse about things, like in the most recent Read Reviews that we did, we were discussing Frederick Douglass's the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass.
That's awesome.
So it's really interesting history stuff. It's really important, and Justin knows his stuff. So
that's cool. It's a great opportunity to learn too. That's the thing I love about podcasting, whether you're listening to podcasts or doing your own. It's just like an ongoing learning process. And that's definitely what I want to appreciate most about podcasting, but it's definitely the thing that I use podcasting to replace university with, for sure. Like, it's fun. Like, it's not me, like, I'm very sensitive to, like, coming across as, like, some sort of know-it-all or whatever, or, like, pretentious, but it's definitely, like, I love teaching, and for me, teaching is part of my, like, radical political positionality. Like, I use education as a political tool. I think it's one of the most crucial and important ones. So by having an opportunity, like, through the podcast, to tackle topics and issues and kind of bring them to light and have an interesting take and the time to, like, research it and present it properly, it's certainly a great opportunity, for sure.
That's the thing. Like, I'm just a grunt, right? Like, I've been a laborer for 20 years. So for me, like, and out of it, but yet I value education in the sense that, like, people like yourself or Justin who have gone through the effort and the time to learn about a particular subject, I really value that. The meat grinder
is what it's called, bro. It's called the meat grinder.
Right. You've gone through the meat grinder. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. And it, to get more knowledge from people who really know their stuff, it's I think a great opportunity for people like myself.
It's so funny. Some of my buddies in podcasting, when I go on their shows, they're like, "Oh, Matt's an expert in ... and they'll say, like, or they'll call me an anthropologist. I'm like, geez, I don't even, like, I'm unemployed, like, itinerant, like, know-it-all.
But you know your stuff. That's I think that's the point, right?
Yeah, it's just fun, man, because it puts this huge smile on my face, even when we do our podcast, which is not video because I'm actually photophobic. But I'm always smiling, like, when I'm podcasting. So I think that's really the point. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. It's fun and you can learn. And a person like yourself can teach. All right. So with all the, background out of the way, what are we talking about today?
Extremely heavy political topics. So, like, we've known each other for years, so it is very much, we're going to see where this conversation goes, I think. But one is definitely, like, if you want to know anything about medical topics, ask me anything about concussions and the intersectionality in chronic illness. It's something that I'm trying to develop. I'm trying to start... I will start writing on these topics, and I want to do, like, presentations and, like, public lectures and things. So I'm trying to, like, polish up my game. So if you have any questions or you want to talk about those, and then as a couple of Canadians, we have to talk about the discoveries at the residential schools, and I would like to talk about some of the dynamics going on there.
Yeah, maybe we should save that for later. It's pretty heavy stuff.
Maybe at the end.
So I guess just to start off, like, you're going to be doing a series on your show about medical misinformation, the wellness industry, stuff like that. So what are some of the specific topics you're going to be covering in that?
So, oh geez, that's so many. Look, where do I start?
I know, it's too much almost.
So wellness and lifestyle interventions are terms that have been co-opted by various actors, whether they be people who are trying to capitalize on it, like literally make money off of it, or just people who have like misappropriated it and they're using it in an incorrect way. And it's one of those situations where when you see a new idea being warped and changed, it's almost like it opens up opportunities for predatorial practices to come in. So we have on our show a suite. It's under the number 72, and it's just going to go all the way down the alphabet. So 72A is about my intracranial electromagnetic neurostimulation treatments that I'm getting from a neuropsychologist. So hold on to your hats. That's it's an episode I'm really proud of. So that's 72A, like how Canadians say A-E-H. And then 72B, I believe, is about a couple of charlatans. And then we have another one that's actually about real wellness practices, like various supplements you can take, what's real, what's not, things to shy away from. Because one thing with having a lot of concussions, but it's very true for pretty much anyone who has any sort of chronic illness, including mental health challenges, there are no direct interventions, right? So you're kind of reliant on a wellness approach or making various lifestyle interventions, as I call it. So whether it's getting more exercise, trying to regulate your sleep, drink more water, eat better, go get a massage, go see that physiotherapist, blah, 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 blah. There's 1.5 million things you can do, and all of those are legitimate. But within that, there's an opportunity for basically misinformation, as well as people who are trying to capitalize on people who have disabilities and chronic illnesses, which I think is a next level of evil. So
yeah, that's where
like,
you get
leave us alone.
People...
Like, shit, man, life's hard enough. Can't you just leave us alone?
Right.
We don't have the money.
Yeah, so that's where you get the people trying to sell like ionic bracelets and like or magnets and as cure-alls to back pain and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, we did a hatchet job on Joe Rogan for specifically about the brain pills and things like this.
Oh, what a joke that guy is.
It was thorough too. It's like 43 minutes, man. It's like we hit every single base.
That's awesome. I think often a lot of the stuff that I've consumed in my life has talked about like how you can't do that with the brain. Like you can't take a magic pill and make yourself suddenly 10 times smarter, right? But exactly. It's almost assumed that people know that. So a show that really goes in depth into that is, I think, a valuable service. I'm going to definitely put a link to that in the show notes.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
That's super important.
And that's exactly that. That's the political dynamic. That's why I think it's so important to put this information out, because it's like a no-brainer in like the medical anthropology circles that I ran in as a grad student. But there definitely is, like, without us trying to do this as like sort of academics, but there is definitely a bit of a boundary between the academia and the general public, and a lot of times it's just because academics aren't very good speakers, right? They're not good at presenting their information, or maybe they're shitty writers, but they're like deep thinkers, but they just can't like write anything proper, you know? Yeah,
that's totally fair. Like these are different skill sets, right?
Exactly.
So okay, so you mentioned intracranial electrostimulation.
Let's see, intracranial electromagnetic neurostimulation.
Okay,
yeah. From a Jungian perspective. So, like, I could go on, but so don't worry, we busted it up. We busted up the episode with some good music there that I might get sued over. So listen while you can. It's fine. But okay, so. Essentially, okay, do you know the Dr. Ho's TENS machine, like for the muscles, where they shock your muscles? Like, it's almost like
I've seen that. Yeah,
the infomercial, right? Yep. All right, so it's like that, only on a very lower level. So it feels like a bunch of pinpricks on my skull at various places, and depending on where she puts the electrodes, essentially, and what of the 4 brain frequencies, like alpha, beta, gamma, and theta, I believe it is, she shoots into my brain. It's almost like she can do, how she's described it, is it repairs the cells from the interior of the brain out. So the problem with concussions, the damage happens not on the surface. It's not from like your brain hitting your skull. That was like previous thinking of it. It's actually from axonal tearing. It's called diffuse axonal tearing, diffuse axonal injuries, down in the interior part of the brain. So down like within the gray matter or like around the white matter, the lower level of the brain. So that's why concussions don't show up on MRIs or X-rays or CT scans, really, because the damage is so far down. The functional MRI will be the thing that allows that to be like scanned for, but it's too expensive. It's like a rare technology still, but in the future it will be more common. But anyway, so she uses an EEG where she maps my brain essentially. And after like I got this done in the first session, I come back for the second one. She has this printout of all these like, it looks like a series of skulls if you're looking at the, like an outline of a skull if you're looking from the top down. And depending on the frequency of the 4 frequencies, they show different, like it looks like Doppler radar, like a weather report basically. And she's able to point to different colors and areas and say, this is this is that, and so on and so forth. And she's a neuropsychologist who's been doing this for like 25 years. So like a lot of it is like way too advanced, but in a nutshell, she shocks my brain. Like it feels like at the beginning, it feels like zzz, 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 like that sort of thing, but it drops you, and get this, into a deep hallucinogenic trance. Wow. And so she takes a Jungian perspective. So she looks at the personality as a bunch of different component parts and how they interact and work with each other, and like some therapy around that. That's the Jungian approach. So she almost, I was coming out of my third trip, as I started calling them after this, after I started getting like, oh, I know what you're doing now. I came out of my like third or fourth session, and I looked at her. I'm like, dude, you're my shaman. Like, you're a shaman. And she's like, she started laughing. She's from like the Czech Republic, right? So she's like, and she's not like into that sort of stuff really. But she just laughed, and I'm like, but that's what you're doing. You're guiding me through a hallucinogenic trip. And then we do like a review session for like 10 minutes after, which is like the decompression phase. So it's beautiful. Yeah. That's interesting. So it doesn't hurt at all? No, not at all. No. Except she does this other protocol called LENS. So it's low energy neurostimulation. So it's just like the same thing, only a lot lower level. And for some reason, it fucks me up. And it's because of all the concussions. Like, she's like, you're not supposed to be able to feel anything. And for me, it feels like various types of like extreme pain, like whether it's like a knife or a nail being driven into that point, like not actually, but like that's what it feels like, obviously, or like a lot of pressure. And there's been a few times with it where I've like had to shout out like pain, but the next day, like I feel a lot better. And it's almost, and she describes it as like bringing my brain and my electrical signals in my brain into equilibrium. So it's given me so much balance, dude, like so much calm. So the concussions throw that off kind of thing? Is that? It does, yeah. It's almost like I'm hyper sensitive to things, because and what I've been learning is hard to articulate, and this is something that I'd probably like include in my memoir at some point or whatever, but like it's almost like for the last, like I got my first concussion when I was 14. I'm 38. Oh shit, I wish I was 28. 38 now. So for the last like 20 years, I've been doing like a lot of work and keeping things on the level. And I think it's almost like my brain is overtaxed. So when anything comes in and kind of fucks with my equilibrium, essentially, it can send me for a spiral. Right. So I don't know. But I'm just working out ideas out loud right now. That's why I love podcasting. See chapter 4 of my non-existent book. There you go. Yeah, that's right. So how often do you go for those? I should go weekly. Can't really afford weekly. So I'm switching to once every other week. Like every other Friday. But it's up in Nanaimo, and I'm down in like Victoria, so it's like 2 hours both ways. So part of it is like the actual drive is pretty taxing for me. So that's kind of like related to like if I overdo it a little bit in any aspect of my life. Like if I'm outside for too long, if I drive for too long, if I talk for too long, anything, right? And do any activity for too long, I go for like spirals. Like that's where I'm at now after like 40 concussions. And
no kidding.
It's like getting dicey.
That's hard on the brain, right?
Evidently, yeah. I was starting to feel it, and I was whatever. So my methodology when I was in grad school, when I was doing my research, is called reflexivity. So it's part of the basis of that is using your own experiences as a research tool. So folks, good folks of Corey's show, that's why I'm talking about myself and being so open, by sharing my personal experience. I hope that it's relatable to anybody out there who maybe has a number of TBI like myself or any sort of chronic illness, because a lot of what I'm saying, I'm sure, is relatable to people who have like mental health struggles or various pain conditions and things. So, because of all the concussions, my friend, I've totally forgot what you asked me. But
no, I think you answered it.
Oh, did I? Oh, that's so funny. Okay, cool. Sometimes I go on autopilot, man.
No, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
So I suppose something that people might wonder is, how did you go from your first concussion to your 40th? Is the brain, is it more sensitive to concussion after each one?
Yeah, totally. So I would say after number 5, I was 19. It was my first car accident. That's when symptoms started becoming permanent. They didn't really go away anymore. There was no recovery.
Okay.
But they started off like light, right? But with each subsequent concussion, there would be new symptoms, or pre-existing ones would become more severe, right, as time goes on.
Okay.
And yeah, it is easier to get them, but I would say of my 40 concussions, I'd say like 30 of them are like full blast concussions. Like I've been punched in the face, I've fallen down in the ice, like I've fallen down stairs, gotten in car accidents, plural. I've been in like 4 car accidents, maybe 5. Just every way you can get a concussion, I've probably done it like 3 or 4 times.
Series of unfortunate events sort of situation.
That's basically like my lived reality. Is a series of unfortunate events with a lot of hard work and determination mixed in there as well.
Right.
Yeah. Jeez, so like I also have like I don't know, I'd say like 24, I call them bell ringers. And those are like those low level, like hit my head on the cabinet sort of bumps. Now what I've noticed after like say 25 to 30 count, those became mid-range to like fairly severe concussions, little bell ringers. So
where like a person who hadn't had your experience might hit their head and it wouldn't mean
do
much.
Anything. You just rub the back of your head, you'd be like, oh, dumbass, and you just walk away. Maybe grab an ice pack and be fine in like 2 minutes, right?
And that knocks you right down, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it'll make like the next say like 3 or 4 days like pretty severe with pain, and also what I call like my symptoms, and that's just like the generalized grab bag of all the neurological stuff that goes haywire within me on the daily basis. So it's anything from like balance to light sensitivity, tinnitus, like pretty much if there's something you can have that is like neurologically derived causally, I got it, and I've probably experienced it. So that's what I like being so expressive and sharing so much of my personal experience, because there's a lot in there that like people, just if you have a general neurological condition or issue, I'm sure there's a lot of relatable things in there. So that's another thing I really like about podcasting is I've been able to meet a lot of other chronically ill podcasters, and it's something that we do, podcasting, without, often they won't disclose or they don't really talk about it much, but like podcasting is a fantastic thing for the disabled people out there, because it's basically the world just opened up to you and has become available, whereas oftentimes our lived experience is shut inside, with the windows or the curtains drawn because we're like light sensitive and shit, or we have social anxiety. Podcast is a great way to like reintegrate to the world.
For sure. Yeah, that's so. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people around that deal with chronic illnesses or chronic or who have disabilities. But is there like a lot of people who have a lot of concussions? Is this relatively common? It's
like I'm on 2 Facebook sort of support groups. One's like includes the caregivers, and the other is just for the people with TBIs. I just, after 2.5 years, found someone else who had like 25 or 20 concussions or something like that, or she was a caregiver of somebody who had like 20.
Okay.
So no, I've never met somebody like me. Like I got more than like most, pro athletes, like NFL football players and shit. It is basically like, I feel like an island out there. So I think I've never thought of it this way, but I think that's why I like finding, in my research, I called it affinity, finding a sense of shared experience or shared realities that you guys can relate to. So when I talk about my symptoms, that's a way for me to establish a sense of affinity with other people who have generalized chronic illnesses. Because there's a lot of like people with like balance issues, or as I said, like light sensitivity or tinnitus or something, I
think that's that's a great tool. And I think that part of the misconception that a lot of people have about like chronic illness and whatnot is that they think that if somebody has a thing, then that means there must be a bunch of people that have the thing. Mm-hmm. Right. Where I think it's actually relatively common that people's individual experiences are totally unique, and they're, you're the only person with as many concussions as you have experienced. And there's other people who have a specific thing, and they're the only person that kind of has that thing, which is part of the problem with diagnosing and treating and figuring this stuff out.
Yeah, totally. And I think oftentimes medical science is not a new take. It's pretty classic, but they're binary, right? Right. You either have this or you don't have this, right? Whereas my research, I used existentialism, phenomenology, and dialectics. Right. So if for your fans of Marx out there, who I know you have many, it's same sort of idea. So rather than it being a binary, which is this or that, dialectics are this and that, right? So we have our own unique experiences, and this is central in existentialism. We have our own unique experiences, but we also have our unique experiences are always shared as well. Right. And that's that like fragmentary yet real sense of affinity. And then the other concept I used in my research was more of an emotional sense of shared experience, and I called that empathy. So it's like, I know what that feels like, man. Like I know what it feels like to walk into like a crowded environment and feel like your brain is getting like ripped in half. I just know what that feels like. People, and when you use that language, it's like, it's visceral, and people are like, oh no, you really fucking know what that feels like.
Yeah. Like that's a thing that I have experienced, and we can relate on that. Yeah,
totally.
No, that's it's like you say, like it's a tough subject, I guess, but it's really interesting.
Morbidly fascinating is what I call it.
Right. Yeah. So I suppose your treatments, they're not covered by like insurance or anything.
No, just the basic like Canadian healthcare. Like I got a general practitioner, and then through my wife's employer, like extended healthcare, I have like, oh damn, I just on my last massage burned through my last massage for the year, and it's July. I'm fucked. So I'm gonna start like greasing the physiotherapist for some rub downs. I'm just be like, dude, just massage me. Shut up. Forget about my knee. It's fine. I just use that as a ruse to get a free neck rub out of you, dude. Surprise. So I got a lot of patient agency, man. So you get creative, actually, is what so I mentioned earlier, like lifestyle interventions, right? There's a lot of stuff I can do for relatively free, so there's a reason why I don't take all the supplements in the world, because for one, vast majority of them don't do shit. Folks, if you're wondering, anyone, whether you have chronic illness or not, take fish oil, make sure it's wild sourced fish oil, just salmon. You don't have to get into like krill fish oil. Magnesium for sleep. Don't worry about melatonin. Don't worry about sleeping pills, just magnesium for sleep. And a B complex vitamin. You usually just urinate or piss it out, but
if you have a if you're short on it,
it's great. Yeah, it'll go right into your body and make you feel like $1 million. And you don't have to really tangle with anything else Joe Rogan's selling. I do stuff like that, or like home-based exercises, so I don't have to get a gym membership. So it's more like I try to incur as few costs as possible, rather than like really I just can't fiscally go after every single treatment that I should be able to go after. So I try to do it for either free or like minimal costs, you know.
Which I guess is part of where the politics comes from, right? Like we have a society that doesn't actually give you the ability to treat your situation the way it should be treated.
Exactly. Yeah, it's literally where the Marx comes in right there. And there's a healthy strand of Marxism in anthropology in general, especially feminist approaches, like gender approaches in anthropology, and also medical anthropology, because we have it better in Canada for sure. Any American listeners you have probably assume that we just have like I don't know, we're just like dancing around in rainbows and unicorns up here, but it's not the same. It's better than what America's got, but it's could be better up here as well.
The bar, setting the bar at America is pretty damn low.
Yeah, they got like health outcomes that are in like they're down with, like, no offense, Botswana. Like, I know you've had a rough go, but America's down there with you with Botswana. Yeah. That's their health outcomes. They're down in like the 80s, I believe it is now. Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah. But so we definitely bring in like a political economic perspective because there's real lived costs. So anthropology tends to try to ground it down on the personal experience level, whereas a sociologist would look more at like the superstructure and the system and look for like cost savings there. But that's just like minor differences in our disciplines. But essentially, we use Marx a lot, and it is very apparent that Marx was on to something when you acquire a chronic illness or a disability.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are the long-term effects going to be? Are your treatments going to help mitigate some of the long-term effects, or what do you think is happening there?
Yeah, I was really worried before I met, her name is Lenka out in Nanaimo, my neuropsychologist. She has given me hope because it's the only thing that I've ever done that has been an actual direct intervention. Like she is directly intervening, and it could just be into my mental health, and that's just bringing my anxieties down, which has a knockdown effect essentially on my concussion symptoms. If I'm not so anxious, I won't have so many symptoms.
Right.
If I'm not depressed, I won't be so lethargic, for example, you know?
Right.
So she's helping me on that front, and also doing some structural work on the brain, which is like revolutionary, and I'm really excited about it. But outside of that, man, there is just a harsh reality that, and this is going to get pretty damn heavy, but over the last year, and I've been trying to like brush it off as, oh, it's just COVID. Like I'm just, stressed or whatever. I've been noticing like some severe memory lapses that are like Alzheimer's-y, like they're dementia-y. And I'm 38, and in all the literature, and I'm trying not to freak out about this, and I don't Google my symptoms. I don't,
right.
I haven't really even stayed up on the literature anymore because I just know it so well or whatever, it's okay. But like the stats show that when people with a history of concussions, and that's usually like 5, not 30 or whatever my number happens to be, when you get into the age of 40, that's when the declines start happening. And this is where you see a lot of those like ex-NFL and NHL players, like when they're retired, that's when they start going haywire.
Right.
That's when the CTE symptoms start catching up on you. And that's the long-term chronic illness that you see present in the brains of deceased like athletes and soldiers and what have you. It's called CTE. Yeah.
So it's, I mean, I guess hopefully, like you say, like your treatments, they help prolong the time before that starts to really come into effect, eh?
Brother, you just read my mind. That's exactly how I think about it. I'm just trying to buy myself more time because I got a little one and I just want to like...
Yeah.
I'm going to start fucking crying.
Oh, sorry, man.
No, it's okay, man. Like you're a father as well. Like you can imagine, you know exactly what it's like. But yeah, I'm just sort of making the most out of every day and just forcing as much knowledge on her as you really put. No, just kidding. Like a lot of pressure. It's her birthday next week. Actually, she's turning 4.
Nice.
And I got her some left-handed golf clubs, like real golf clubs, and I chopped them down and put some grips on them. So she's getting her little first golf clubs, and then I also bought her a ukulele. So
Nice.
she's gonna be like my little shredder as well. She loves Jimi
awesome.
Hendrix, man. She calls him Uncle Jimmy. Yeah, we
Nice.
listen to music all the time. So it's just like I just want to do like all the things. So like
sure.
in a very much more positive way, having a chronic illness makes me a better parent for sure, because I know what it's like to like not be able to parent. So it's like I'm just gonna go full blast.
Right.
And then it's just
Yeah.
a matter of like taking it down a notch and not exhausting myself every day.
Yeah, as opposed to taking like when you're healthy and when your kids are healthy, you tend to take things like that time for granted a lot of times. But when you have like say a chronic illness, or I know there's people whose children have illnesses, and it's not, I mean, I don't want to pretend that that makes it okay, but it's a thing. You appreciate the time, right?
You do. I'm telling you right now, as somebody with that illness, like I couldn't imagine having what those parents go through with that, and I got all the love and respect for that. But yeah, no, as somebody with a chronic illness, like I'm telling you, I take full advantage of it, and I get a lot of fulfillment out of it, and it's sweeter for sure, considering what I've been through. Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and I'm just trying to take advantage of it.
Well, so I guess it's just really too bad that our society doesn't fucking take care of you.
Yeah.
So that
like honestly, man, $15 a day childcare would be awesome.
Right.
Awesome, right? Because it would just free things up, and that extra cash that I'm spending on childcare, which I have to spend on childcare, I would put her in daycare or preschool or whatever, just because it's good for the development and learning and socialization and all that.
For sure.
But like, because I'm spending so much, as like our family is spending so much on that, that is money that should be going to my neuropsychologist.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's just a calculus we have to do.
Yeah.
And like, it means that I don't get to go as often as I need to or should be going, because, yeah, and it's a sacrifice I'm totally happy to make, right? Like I'm 100%, like I'll sacrifice my own health every day of the week for Violet's well-being. But yeah, it would be sweeter to, only be spending like 150 instead of 775,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of money to be spending on childcare.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
What the hell?
Yeah. It's what, like, it's about, 11,000 a year.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And like, again, we're happy to do it because we're parents and we love our kids or whatever, but like,
right.
doesn't need to be that much.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Not that the people doing the job deserve less pay, but there needs to be a setup where you get help to do this.
Yeah, they should get more pay as well, because they're doing whether or not you're religious, but they're basically doing God's work. Like, I don't care if you're an atheist. Like that is a noble profession. Raising children is the most important profession, I believe, in society, next to like probably doctors and nurses.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing vital work, absolutely.
Told you I get on my soapbox, man, when it comes to these.
Yeah.
Drink some green tea and calm down a little.
Fair. I guess we might as well, let's shift gears a little bit. We're at 45 minutes. Let's talk about the discovery of unmarked graves and on residential school locations in Saskatchewan and in Kamloops, and understandably, people are searching everywhere now because we found there's people finding all kinds of unmarked graves now. And yeah. So what do you, I mean, I guess I've talked about this on 3 or 4 different podcasts now.
Oh, okay.
And I'm still at the point where I'm like, I don't have the appropriate words to say, except to say like people should be listening to their the indigenous communities around them, and not in the sense that I'm putting, I'm going to my indigenous friend and asking them what they think and how I can,
Yeah, let's mind the one indigenous person that we don't even like, not even friends with, let's be honest, probably just some guy you work with, and like get him into another uncomfortable conversation. I think this is definitely a time where non-Indigenous Canadians need to either shut the fuck up and listen,
Yeah.
or like hopefully go educate yourselves and educate like each other, basically. Like I feel like it's gone, like there should never have been those days, but gone
Right.
are finally the days where Indigenous people need to educate the settler colonialists like ourselves here. I mean, it's the 21st century, man. There's
The
Google.
information is out there, right?
It's
Like,
just so easy to access now.
yeah.
But back in like the 90s, like there was definitely a systemic effort to suppress all sorts of documentation and cast doubt on survivors' stories, call them just rumors and hearsay. There was a lot of that going on in the 90s. You and I are old enough to remember that shit. And many of us, like I happened to get a little bit of an education on it in grade 8 from some radical social studies teacher that I had in grade 8. It's probably why I went into the social sciences, man. It was because of that teacher. But I know that it wasn't until recently, here in BC at least, like I'm talking 3-4 years, probably since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission 2017, where it's been the education on residential schools and other issues pertaining to First Nations in Canada has been starting to be included in the curriculum. And we are having the same debates that Americans are having, especially in the southern United States, around what to include in the curriculum, and or if kids are like, or if they're old enough to be able to like handle this information. And like I did a lot of tutoring within and outside of grad school of kids who are like school aged. Their capacity, like I hate hearing that kids can't handle it. I think that's infantilizing. I think the youth can handle a lot more political education than we actually provide them. I think we got to stop sanitizing education for our youth. They think we're idiots, or they think that we think they're idiots. Yeah, and I find it insulting. So I think they can handle it, and they're having these discussions amongst themselves. And I think a lot of the parents who have like teenage kids, they're like, they go to talk to them about these discoveries, and they find out that the kids are already did their own research.
Yeah.
And they're kind of surprised that their parents are just like hearing about this for the first time.
Yeah, so. I think in Saskatchewan, at least, I think there is discussion about the residential schools. And of course, if your child is taking like a social studies class or something that does current events, they have to be talking about this now, right? Like, I guess
do your kids in their school or whatever, like, were they having these conversations? I know it's summertime now, but.
Yeah, my son just graduated high school. So of course at high school level, they were talking about a lot of this stuff. But my partner's daughter is 6. So they're just in she's just in kindergarten. Yeah, they're not talking about hardly anything, but but I think like the schools themselves, they do have at least some acknowledgement of residential schools in things. And
because prior it was just like nothing. Like it was just like, it was like, oh, we had some sort of copacetic like trading relationship. Like that's what the education we got, right?
Yeah, that's right. Like I didn't know about residential schools until I was an adult who was like, I don't know, just about 30, I think.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of people are like this as well. Like Evan is like an Ottawa boy, right? And like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission like happened right there. That's where the settlement was reached, and so on and so forth. And like I was in grad school in anthropology, and I was aware of it, but like it wasn't that it should have been a huge deal around the department. I'm sorry. Like we should have been having anthropologists there like bearing witness, like just being present and just standing in the back, because that's what anthropologists do. We're fucking creeps, right? We just sit in the back of a room and like write notes about people, right? But I mean, they should have been sending the grad students there to like, you know what I mean? Like it should have been a thing, but it was like nothing. And I just happened to know about it because I come from UBC in British Columbia, which is actually a fucking Marxist anthropology department. And so I go over to Carleton. Sorry, I'm like bashing on my goddamn former alumni, but I mean, it was one of the most apolitical university environments I've ever seen. And so I had to basically kind of create like that opportunity for me and some of my fellow grad students who are like also puzzled at our apolitical stance.
Right.
But yeah, I remember it being a thing. But even then, and this is 2017, like these mass graves, it was still written off as sort of like rumor and hearsay.
Right.
But I know, like I took forensic archaeology back at like SFU. I've taken every university class. I went for 17 years, but I did take 2 classes in forensics, and we were talking about the rumors of mass graves, and we were also exploring like sites of genocide and like, you know, Rwanda and other places, Kosovo and stuff. So we knew that it was around, and honestly, if you just talk to a First Nations person, a survivor, they'll tell you. But it's just like the state didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the tragedy.
Yeah, like...
I don't appreciate Justin Trudeau's kicking the fucking can down the road as well and like being stingy with the federal dollars. This needs to be a full investigation.
Yeah, that's right. And like there's a little bit of money coming from the provincial government here to go to helping look, but it's not enough. Like there needs to be real work done here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I often say, like, even while we're doing this, like the federal government still needs to get like clean drinking water on reserves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's hundreds of reserves across Canada that don't have clean drinking water. They don't have sufficient schooling. They don't have sufficient like infrastructure. Like these are all things. And I know like the media asked Jagmeet Singh, like, well, are we just going to write a blank check for Indigenous peoples to get clean drinking water? And I'm like, let's just write them a blank check for everything.
Like, fuck it. Yeah, let's just do it. Like, what's that going to cost? Like $5 billion? Like, I know that's a big number, but like, we're Canada. We have the 7th largest economy in the world. We can afford this.
We can afford this. Yeah.
And it's the morally righteous thing to do. And this isn't to try to like make up for the heinous history of our nation and the way we've treated First Nations people, Indigenous people in this country. Like this by no means makes up for that. No. This is just the thing that you should do as like
because it's just the right thing to do.
It's just the right thing to do. It's the human thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bizarre to me that we,
and then they got to take us to court. They got to take the government to court every single time to just like squeeze a couple of dollars out to like
just to get the
be
basics.
Allowed to do some like logging or some shit.
Yeah.
like God.
Well, and then you get like people fighting against bans doing their own lobster fishing, and you get you know,
yeah, and in the Maritimes like last year, yeah, that was a huge story.
Yeah, and then you've got like logging going on in BC, and
yes, that's a big deal right now. Yeah,
it's almost like as a country, Canada just doesn't give a shit about Indigenous peoples, and instead just wants to exploit all the resources that we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I believe it's tonight. The election or nomination, I'm not quite sure what the specifics how the process works, but it's basically a convention to elect the next Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. Okay. It is happening tonight. And also this morning or yesterday, we have a new Governor General in this country, and she is Inuit. Right. And that's amazing. Her dad is from the South. He's a white guy. But she identifies Inuit. And just to hear her talk, holy shit, man, I got goosebumps. Like,
well, I mean, maybe
that's a good thing. But
yeah,
I mean,
maybe
that's
we
just
can see
gesture.
some change, right?
Yeah. I mean, those are like gestures. Like, how about $5 billion to like help? Like a fucking blank check. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think Jagmeet
sell off
Singh
that
said
pipeline. Maybe that could be there's $2 billion right there, bro.
Yeah, that's right. The pipeline that isn't feasible anymore.
Exactly. So we basically just shot $2 billion down a tube. You can't fix some drinking water, turn those tubes into pipes, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Let's do some actual work.
Yeah.
Okay. So 55 minutes. Where can
my
people
heart's
find
racing. I'm getting like I'm like super angry. I feel like I just did a bunch of cardio, man. It's like I see the power of podcasting right there. You get fired up like we just went to a demonstration.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully we can if the right person hears this, maybe they can help take some action. Where can people find your content?
Okay, Nooks and Crannies is available everywhere except for YouTube because I do have photophobia and extreme light sensitivity. As I said, we cover all the topics and then sometimes just random stuff like how to make marinade or memories of playing street hockey growing up. So there's a little bit of everything on Nooks and Crannies. We love the music by Cullah as well. That is public domain music. Anybody can find it. There's links in our show notes to every episode to his music. And check us out. We are doing both a wellness suite and we're also going to be doing many episodes about First Nations issues, especially every time, unfortunately and morbidly, another grave is found. So I just want to say that I'll speak for Evan. We stand in solidarity with you, and we are just, we're just, I don't know. I start fucking crying every time, man.
Yeah, it's hard to express, right? Yeah, no worries.
It's disgusting, but there are things that we can do, and there are no right words to say. But the one thing we all can do is get our asses educated and start educating others who need it as well.
Yeah, that's right.
In solidarity.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with me and information about your illness. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
I always bring the cheery topics, brother. Thanks for having me, man. It's always a blast chatting with you, bro.
You bet. All right. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching and or listening. Remember to share this show with your friends and on the social media site that you use the most. I want to say thank you again to everyone who supports this show on Patreon. It's really appreciated, and it helps me spend more time on this and my other projects when I'm not at work so that I don't have to work as many gig hours. If you want to contribute, you can do that at patreon.com/skepticalleftist, or you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/skepticallefty. If you can't contribute financially, then a 5-star rating and a review on your podcast app of choice or one of the podcast review sites like Podchaser would be great. If you want to find more from me, then you can make sure to check out the show notes or check my Linktree. That's linktr.ee/skepticalcorey. You can find all my social media stuff there, as well as links to my other shows, which include Skeptarchy, which is a panel show I do with some very smart people. For Many People's Strength, which is a show about Saskatchewan politics, and a new project I'm involved in that's called the Atheist, Humanist, Leftist Revolutionaries with my friend Damien Marie at Hope. My Twitter is @SkepticalLefty, and my Facebook page is The Mind of a Skeptical Leftist. Or you can send me a friend request, which is facebook.com/cjbrainstorm. I accept most friend requests. You can also email me at mindofaskepticalleftist@gmail.com. And if you want to be a guest on the show or know someone I should reach out to, then feel free to let me know. You can book interviews in my available time slots on my Calendly, which you can find on my Linktree. Thanks so much for listening, and let's just all try to be kind to other leftists and to all people, and even if we think they're wrong. The battle that we are fighting is an uphill one and has many obstacles, and we will need all the comrades we can get.